nerds, welcome back to Nerd Culture. My name is Ruth, and today I'm going to be educating you all on some forgotten gems. I'm talking about Disney's top 10 most underrated movies. So everyone knows Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella and Lady and the Tramp and The Lion King. We all think of those obvious classic Disney movies, but there are more than just those. If you say a movie is underrated, that means that the average person probably doesn't think of this movie very regularly. If a person asks you to name 20 Disney movies, even if you were a fan or weren't a fan, these movies probably wouldn't make it to your list. Underrated movies also have to be better than people give them credit for. These movies aren't talked about a lot, but they should be. So like everyone knows Aladdin, and for good reason, that is a great movie. But no one talks about Home on the Range. Also for a good reason, because what was that movie? So I'm talking about the movies that are underestimated by people, but are worthy of just as much love. These are the forgotten gems of Disney.
Nerd.
Number 10, The Sword and the Stone. We all know the legend of King Arthur, and this is the story of how he came to be. So the old king dies, but there's this talk of a war coming, but there's no heir to the throne. So obviously, the Sword and the Stone magically appears in the kingdom with an inscription on it proclaiming that whomever is able to remove the sword becomes king. But when no one is able to, it is soon forgotten about, and the kingdom faces dark days. But this movie is so much more than that infamous mythical challenge. We follow young Wart and his wizard friend Merlin. Merlin is a hilarious tutor for Wart, and they both go on a lot of little adventures together, full of magic and valuable life lessons. It's also a great use of the young boy learning from a crazy old smart man from the future, like Rick and Morty or Doc and Marty, but this time during 14th century England. I feel like this movie deserves to be as much of a classic as Sleeping Beauty, and I think The Sword and the Stone in particular adds a lot of humor. Number 9, Treasure Planet. I've met some people who have heard of this Disney movie, and they always love it. It is truly an original story, but not one that every fan might have seen. Essentially, it's Treasure Island, but in space. This movie has a beautiful and unique animation style, and some of the scenes are absolutely breathtaking. I think the reason that people have forgotten about this movie is it doesn't have that typical Disney look to it. The characters aren't big-eyed or circle-based. There's a lot of hard lines and edges to their faces, which gives it a more angsty, realistic feel. This movie follows Jim Hawkins, who has never had a strong father figure in his life, as he goes on a grand space treasure hunt filled with adventure. This is a great Disney movie to watch if you're tired of the typical romance, childish, comedic movie. This film really took a chance to be different. Plus, I'm Still Here will always be a banger. Number 8, Atlantis. Whenever I've mentioned underrated Disney movies, this one always comes up. I'd never heard or seen anything about this movie until a year ago. I feel like Atlantis is one of those movies that if you didn't have it in your limited VHS or DVD Disney collection, then you didn't really see it. It's gotten more recognition lately because people, are trying to find Disney movies they haven't seen before. But it is definitely a film I feel like a lot of people would say they haven't watched. Similar to Treasure Planet, it has more of an edgy look to it. There are actually 2 Atlantis movies. The first one is Atlantis: The Lost Empire, and the sequel is Atlantis: Milo's Return. In the first movie, we follow Milo and his fellow adventurers as they go on a journey to find Atlantis. There are no catchy songs in this movie, which might be why we don't think of it as a Disney movie. It takes risks to be different and explores more of an intense storyline. Number 7, Brother Bear. This movie was really slept on. It is such a cute story and a great tribute to indigenous tribes. The forest setting is beautiful in a way that I think is even more immersive than Pocahontas. It is not a typical story by any means. There is so much feeling to the story, and I don't know how to explain what I mean by that. I guess it just makes you feel really connected to the world. It's all about the relationships that you have with people who are different from you. The songs in this movie are great. On My Way will always get me singing. And Transformation is absolute perfection. That score and the beautiful vocals always give me the chills. We follow young Indian Kenai, who is played by Joaquin Phoenix. And he's trying to avenge his older brother who was killed by a bear, but ultimately he gets turned into a bear. And honestly, I just don't want to spoil this movie anymore, but I will say that it gets dark before it gets cute. Number 6, The Black Cauldron. Famously known as Disney's darkest film, and that might be why it's not that popular. People don't go to Disney to see dark themes, but if you're a person who is into movies meant for children but are scary enough to scare adults, you won't get better than this. Every part of this movie feels ominous. The Horned King as a villain is terrifying. This is a Disney movie that your friends will understand if you haven't seen because it is that uncomfortably horrifying. It was the first Disney movie to receive a PG rating. The Black Cauldron itself has a power to summon an army of the undead. It has everything you'd want from a dark fantasy: an unsuspecting hero, ambitious princess, and a villain who wants to rule the world. There is a big fan base around this movie now, but ultimately when it was released, it wasn't received very well. That being said, it is in no way cliche. Not everyone will enjoy this movie, but I don't think we should allow it to be forgotten, even though we want to forget about it when we're trying to fall asleep. Number 5, the Aristocats. This movie is the definition of underestimated. I will ask my friends if they've seen the Aristocats, and they will claim they will by referencing everybody wants to be a cat, but there is so much more that happens in this film. The amount of side characters is insane, but they all contribute something very meaningful to the story. We all love Duchess and her 3 kittens. Marie is one of the most marketed Disney characters ever. But the 2 dogs, Napoleon and Lafayette, continue to make me laugh every time I watch this movie. The geese, Abigail and Amelia, are also hilarious. If you don't remember dogs or geese in this movie, go rewatch it right now. The main storyline and characters are flawless in my opinion. Literally, the movie is about a rich woman who really loves her cats. She's getting older and trying to figure out her will. She decides that her cats will inherit her fortune when she dies, and that Edgar, her butler, will watch over those cats, and then once the cats die, the fortune will go to Edgar. Edgar overhears this and believes that he will be dead before the cats and therefore not inherit any fortune. So he drugs the cats, disposes them in the countryside, and then the movie becomes this grand journey of Duchess and her kittens trying to find their way back home, which proves to be both intense and fun. I love this movie, especially because it's one of the few old Disney movies where you can watch and still see the baselines of where the animators were doing their hand-drawn sketches. And I don't know, I just love that authentic, messy look. Number 4, The Great Mouse Detective. Everyone sadly forgets about this movie. It has that cheap look to a movie that didn't really do well, but it is anything but cheap. The characters are so well developed, and the villain has a song that easily tests scars. This movie has scarier parts than other Disney movies, including a bar fight. It has a great plot with some surprises, and obviously is a tribute to Sherlock Holmes. Basil, who is the Great Mouse Detective, is a seemingly brave and confident investigator, but proves to be sensitive and emotional about his failures. Olivia is this little girl mouse whose father has been kidnapped, so she goes to Basil for help, and Basil ultimately uncovers an even bigger scheme. Dawson plays the role of Watson to Basil as Sherlock, and their bromance is great. There are very memorable scenes in this movie. If you guys have seen that famous Big Ben scene and wonder what movie it's from this one. And it is just such a fun movie. Definitely worth watching if you're looking for an original yet thrilling animated picture. Number 3, Bolt. I know you guys are going to hate that there's a recent 3-dimensional film on this list, but I'm telling you, Bolt is not like the other ones you think are overrated. I truly believe Bolt is one of the few recent movies that is able to capture the classic Disney magic of what makes a good story. A lot of people felt like they didn't need to see this movie, but it's one of those secret movies that I can always go back to. I get a strong sense of what home is whenever I watch this movie. The story is completely original and filled with excitement and danger throughout. The movie follows Bolt, who is a canine superhero actor who doesn't realize that he's on TV. He thinks his superpowers and the TV storyline are real, which proves to be hilarious. This dog's about to have the greatest epiphany ever. A Cat Mittens provides a wake-up call to Bolt and the audience as to what it really means to be a pet. Rocket the hamster is the hilarious companion to the other 2 main characters in their battle between real and fantasy. I always cry during this movie, and not always during the same part. If you are really looking for a wholesome time without the cheesy love story, this is your movie. Number 2, The Rescuers. This is actually my favorite Disney movie. And it's really hard for me to choose a favorite Disney movie. But The Rescuers is truly a forgotten gem. I will forever love this movie. It has that nostalgic old Disney feel to it without any of the marketing. It feels so genuine and it'll just make you smile. I feel like I'm transported to a different time whenever I watch this movie. It is darker than some of the other Disney movies, which has proved to be kind of a theme throughout this list. How come everyone complains that Disney is too safe when all the dark movies are the movies that no one's ever seen? The story follows two mice. Oh, I love them. Bernard and Miss Bianca. They're part of an international rescue team called the Rescue Aid Society. The theme song will get stuck in your head. Warning. They get a message in a bottle from an orphan named Penny, who has been abducted by an evil woman who looks similar to Cruella de Vil and is just as bad at driving. The story is dark and thrilling. I watched this movie on my little box television on my VHS, and some of the scenes were so in the shadows that my screen just looked black. So now rewatching it on Shiny Disney Plus, it's so crazy to see the trees and the water and the grim figures in the forest. The opening song always gets me, with the sad vocals and the ominous still images. The art is truly beautiful. Story explores concepts that are very relatable to children, such as feeling small or captive or lost or abused, but trying to be brave anyway. It deserves so much more recognition than it got. It will always be my favorite. The scene of the mice on Orville flying through the sky while Tomorrow's Another Day is playing fills your soul with childhood bliss. Number 1. Oliver and Company. I love this movie. The biggest criticism us Disney fans hear is Disney is too perfect and flawless and cheesy and lighthearted. I want dark stuff. Well, friends, this movie is dark. The scenes and palette itself are mostly dim-lighted. The villain is a freaking mafia crime boss. It is the first Disney movie to show a character loading a modern-day pistol. Also, the deaths in this movie are some of the most brutal I've seen in any Disney movie. So for all you Disney fans who want some darker material, this movie is for you, despite it being about adorable animals. The pets are all memorable and their characters are all funny in different ways. The plot is also full of surprises. We follow Oliver, who is an orphan kitten, as he is essentially taken in by this thieving gang of dogs. He later, through the course of the story, finds himself in the care of a rich girl named Jenny who takes care of him and gives him this life that he's always wanted. There is a ransom, some kidnappings, a deadly race through the Big Apple. And the entire movie is just a beautiful tribute to 1980s New York. The opening song especially makes you feel very nostalgic for a time period you may not even been alive for. Freaking Billy Joel is in this movie. Come on, man. Just go watch it. The most underrated Disney movie ever. And there you have it, Disney's top 10 most underrated films. If you haven't seen any of these and are craving a movie that's just as good as the Disney classics, I strongly recommend you visit these. Thank you so much for watching. If there are any other Disney movies that you think are underrated that I didn't talk about, feel free to comment them. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe all down below. And check out the other videos we have for you here on Nerd Culture. Bye!